let me just start off by saying that today we have, three very distinguished panelists with us, and they have a wealth of experience. So I would highly encourage you to type in your questions, and we'll pick them up in a bit. But first up, let me just ask each of the panelists to introduce themselves and also share with us, where you come from and what are you currently, doing in your role. Yeah, maybe we'll start off with Stephanie.
Hi, thanks, Branson. And thanks to the SFA for inviting me. I'm very honored to be speaking alongside Chai Kit, Andrea, and Branson, of course. So thanks a lot for the introduction. It's painting a very interesting picture. So again, I'm Stephanie Chu from DBS Bank, and I've been in the bank since 2011, end of 2011. So my role is to look after partnerships in FinTech in the innovation group. And as Branson has talked about it rightly, FinTech is a very broad term right now. So I'm happy to go into that in a little bit, the way we see it at DBS. But essentially our main goal is to produce POCs, so proof of concepts or prototypes. And we do that with FinTechs as well as other types of startups. And through structured engagements and structured programs, which my team and I run. So that's pretty much it from me.
Thanks, Steph. Can we have Chai Kit next? Chai Kit?
Sure. Hi. Thanks, Branson. Hello, everyone. My name is Chai Kit. I'm the CEO, co-founder of RegTech, or the long term is regulatory technology, founded in Singapore, based in Singapore, headquartered in Singapore. What we do actually is, as what Branson have, some of the slides were actually quite relevant to me. The increase in regulatory requirements over the years would mean that, banks like DBS and other financial institutions, including FinTech providers themselves, are finding it very painful to comply and to remain in compliance with what they have been doing in the past, which is basically using combinations of analog and manual processes, throwing bodies at the problem. So that's not going to work over time, and people become very unhappy about it. The regulatory outcome is not good. So what we come in using combinations of our regulatory knowledge and technology to basically help make compliance processes, or what Branson have also mentioned, anti-money laundering, counter-terrorism financing, and know your customers processes, digitized as well as automated, and by using various forms of functional technologies to put in place into the it is basically to design the software that works for clients of various sizes and in different sectors. So that's what we do. So we work with traditional players, like banks and FIs, insurance companies, as well as we work with FinTech, the smaller startups, to help them get over the line in respect of their compliance processes with, say, for example, the regulators in Singapore and elsewhere.
Great.
That's what we do.
Thanks, Chai Kit. Andrea?
Yes, thanks, Branson, and the Singapore FinTech Association for having me. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Aspire. What we do is building a better SME banking platform. We are a startup founded 2.5 years ago, headquartered in Singapore, and present in 4 markets in Southeast Asia, Indonesia, Vietnam, and Thailand. And what we are trying to solve is to create a much simpler and faster experience for small and medium businesses when they access financial services. And we basically honor entrepreneurs. We honor people that had to set up businesses and run them, and we want to make sure that we simplify their lives. So that's me and what Aspire is building.
Great, thanks for the introduction, panelists. So the first question, if I may ask Stephanie, is how did you get into the fintech industry, and what attracted you to to it, and what made you stay? And of course, the rest of the panelists can join in as well. Yeah.
Sure. So it, it's a long career, long and winding path to fintech. But essentially, I originally came from Hong Kong. So that was in 2011. Sorry, I'm about to take you on my life journey, but the more recent one, I hope. So I came from Hong Kong. I was working in a nonprofit at the American Chamber of Commerce, and there I was actually already exposed to a lot of different committees. As you guys know, the SFA has also a lot of subcommittees that tackle different aspects of fintech. So likewise, at the American Chamber, we're looking at different verticals of industries, and there was always the financial services and technology and so on and so forth. So very early on, I was already quite interested through meeting members of different companies. So when I came to Singapore, I was like, I definitely need to change industries, and I want to go in the profit sector, but one that I feel will make a difference in people's lives. And so this is where I joined DBS. And at first, it was more about trying a career change, so I went into change management in the corporate real estate department, and I see that there's a question around ATM channels, and this is part of what they were doing. So it was always really interesting to see the intersect of corporate real estate and technology. And after that, around 2014 is when I moved over to the innovation group. And this is where I got my feet really wet in fintech. And then, through some of the programs that we have launched, like the Hotspot Pre-Accelerator programs, 2 cycles of it, and now the Startup Exchange program is when we solidified and officialized some of our interactions with the startups. So last year, I took on the portfolio of fintech in addition to my previous role of partnerships. And I haven't looked back since, because it's such a fascinating world. I always admire the work that you guys do. And I always see that there's so much potential for collaboration. So it's exciting times, and it's been for a while now, but now I'm happy to say I'm kind of in the thick of it.
Very nice. How about you, Chakit?
Yeah, sure. As I said earlier on, we co-founder of Cynopsis Solutions back in 2014. Prior to that, it wasn't by design. We didn't come out with a view that we want to solve this particular problem, and therefore we start up this business. I mean, it sort of take one step back. It's more like I had a long career in banking and finance. I was running the very important compliance function for an Australian bank for quite a number of years, about close to 15 years. Before that, my background was I was an accountant by training. So I worked in one of the big four for a couple of years. Now, I think for people graduating, or people trying to look at a career switch and all that, it really depends on perhaps needing for you to think about what exactly is it that attracts you to fintech, because fintech, as Branson had mentioned, is actually very, very broad. It could be that organization or that company is providing using technology to provide an alternative financial services to people, or it could be trying to provide a B2B solution to banks, and you will never face the consumer or the customers at the end. So it really depends on what kind of organization you're looking at, and what is it that you like to do. So within a fintech itself, it's still an organization, it's still a company, it still needs to make money, so, and it still have got products or services that it needs to sell. So depending on whether are you a programmer, or are you a business development person, or are you a sales and marketing and so on and so forth, then fintech itself is just a verticals within the broad startup ecosystem. So for me, really, we're in RegTech, we're in the domain which is very, very specialized, automating and digitizing compliance processes. And that, for us, having the knowledge on regulatory requirement and having been there, done that, experienced it, and understand the pain point, does makes it a little bit easier for me trying to solve the problem, because we've been through it. And to be quite frank, I was part of the problem because I was in the compliance department, and therefore we created some of these problems for the organization. And not by my choice, it's by the fact that the regulators have put in place more regulation, and therefore more steps and more processes needs to be implemented, and therefore the processes gets a little bit clunky over the years, and as such, technology needs to come in to help smoothen out some of the clunkiness. So that's how I come into the picture.
Andrea, how are you always in the fintech industry?
So for me, I started my career in banking, in investment banking to be specific. I decided that it was not for me, and I moved to something a bit more exciting when I joined an early stage Lazada in 2012. And I decided to move to sort of technology startups type of path. I spent 5.5 years basically building Lazada Group and seeing a new generation of entrepreneurs basically moving online and serving new customers digitally. And in 2018, I decided to build another company focusing on serving the needs of these sort of new generation of entrepreneurs that are more digital savvy, and they want some better experiences when basically dealing with financial services. So I actually stepped into fintech just 2.5 years ago. So I'm a relatively newbie to the industry, although I've seen technology before, more from a marketplace ecosystem perspective. What attracts me to fintech for me was my personal financial training and finance background early on, and connecting that with my passion for technology and entrepreneurship, which is what probably will also made me stay in this industry, or at least I like it a lot. That's a bit about myself and fintech.
Thanks, Andrea. So for the next question, so we are actually seeing quite a number of questions coming. So if I may ask the panelists to actually share a little bit some of these insights, but keep it brief. So what's like for a typical day at your company? What does it look like? Maybe start with Chai-Kit.
Yeah, I can go. I think in a fintech startup or in general a smaller organization, every single day it presents new challenges in terms of if it's a product offering, then things might break down. There might be bugs, there might be clients complaining or having issues, and then you had to deal with things, multiple I would say priorities or challenging priorities at the same time. So every single day is a new challenge. So for people who needs a very, very, I think, quiet or very structured environment, then I personally think that it might be a little bit overwhelming if you can't handle the constant change and constant demand, as well as being pulled in different directions by different stakeholders.
About
but it's exciting.
For sure.
Yeah. Wow. Where do I begin? There's no typical day is the typical answer. But basically because so DBS looks after some key verticals, notably consumer banking, institutional banking, treasury and markets, and we also have other support units along the way. So there's no typical day, but I think the way I would look at it is that fintech in DBS is of two main pillars. One is DBS as a fintech itself, which is how we see ourselves. Of course, we're not going to be like the type of fintech that Andrea and Chai Kit and yourself, Branson, are operating. We're a lot bigger, but I'm not saying this is always a good thing, by the way. But yeah, so obviously everything that Chai Kit mentioned happens in the bank, except that we have more layers sometimes to go through. But this is for good reason, is because of where we're at right now. If you talk about fintech in terms of us and the fintechs that are in the ecosystem, there are three key ways that we work with them. So the first one is that we look at them as ecosystem partners. That is, you know, leveraging on each other's user base, to put it plainly, and then finding what is that point of integration with each other. The second one is supporting them financially. So obviously, you know, SME loans. That's why Aspire, I really admire the work that Aspire does, and in such a short time, you know, how far they've come. But yeah, loans, as well as to some extent, sometimes equity. And then finally, it's co-creating with the startups and the fintechs. And this is what my team and I essentially do through a program that we call Startup Exchange. So when we look at our collaboration with fintech, or us as a fintech company, there are three key aspects of it, really. One is the financial part of it, the functions. The other one is the technology, as you rightfully pointed out, Branson. And then the third one is empathy, because ultimately you need to develop solutions that matter to people. So we need to make sure that, you know, especially us as the innovation group, that this is always part of every project that we run, is that we need to understand the why. Why are we doing this? And so this is why I feel that, you know, Branson, Chai Kit, and Andrea have really hit the nail on the head on the why, the purpose of all of this. And you know, as a bank, sometimes we need to take a step back and be like, but wait, are we just doing this because other people are doing it? Or is it really what our users or future users or consumer clients would need? So that's where we're at.
Well said. Very, very well said. Yeah, the why. How about you, Andrea?
No, I feel like echoing a bit what Stephanie and Chai Kit mentioned. Number one, is hard to describe the typical day. And if you would try to describe it, probably you would describe it by function a bit, in the sense that the way you run, for example, typically marketing is more a project based. So you typically have projects and you just need to follow up and fine tune, maybe experiments and fine tuning them. So you probably are executing on 2-3 projects, and daily you are on those. If you look at more, you know, commercial, it's more relational. So you typically are, you know, I mean, definitely more outside talking to people, not really during COVID, but probably on the phone. Try to understand a bit what people are needing and solving problems. Operational compliance risk is definitely more processual in nature. So you tend to be systematic. You tend to have, you know, some checks in the morning, and then you know, kind of fine tuning processes along the day. So that's a bit like how I would describe it.
Great. I think the next question will be the most relevant for our audience. Essentially, what are some of the skill sets that you think will be important for and the other career professional looking to switch to, let's say, fintech? Maybe we can start off with Andrea first.
So I think again, this is a broad question, in the sense that it really depends which area of fintech, as you rightly pointed out with the presentation you shared before, you are getting into. And depending on that, the skill set might be different. On how we think about it is, especially from a more maybe early stage career, it's that we are in a, let's say, relatively nascent industry. We're trying to innovate. We're trying to do things differently, and necessarily we are trying to hire for mindset rather than necessarily the full set of skills and experience, especially in some of the functions, right? In some others, like maybe risk and compliance, you tend to prefer someone with a bit of background. I remember an interesting podcast from the founder of Cabbage, which is an SME lender in the US, and then expanding into payments and then deposit and banking product. Recently acquired by Amex, I think, for around I don't know, $1 billion or something. And I remember in the podcast he was saying, if I would have known, how to do SME credit, probably we would have not be able to build a Cabbage. And it was interesting because it was painting the picture of the reason why someone does something different is usually because it's coming from a perspective of an innovation mindset, and trying to break a bit the common ways of doing it. So and I think in the type of mindset, usually you find people like this that want to improve what they've seen.
If I can add to what Andrea has mentioned, I think I've also been looking through some of the questions as well. I mean, where people look at fintech as an industry to enter, whether you are still studying or whether you are in the banking industry or wanting to switch career and so on and so forth, and people keep asking, what is the skills there? I mean, what is the skills there? So Andrea, to his point, you really need to depend on whether which role you're going to perform. If you are not a programmer and you try to apply for a programmer job, it's not going to work, right? And you're going to pick up programming outside of that role that you're going to apply in the first place, right? And if you're, let's say, for example, digital, you're in marketing space, you go and pick up things like digital marketing and all that, and then you can apply that skill to a fintech company, or you can apply that skill to a traditional company, regardless if it is the fintech or otherwise. I think that's number one thing. And number two is that for people who's asking about, is there a book that they can read up? I mean, I think the prep work that you have to be responsible for your own career, what career choice you want to make, depending on whether is it relevant to your study, for example. And if you want to do something relevant to your study, then of course you would have career centers within your institution that would have suggested what you would do in the future. Now then, in terms of own reading, I mean, there are a couple of books that I could sort of very quickly suggest to you. There is the FinTech book, there is the RegTech book, and InsurTech book. So there are a few books that is out there that you can look at in terms of getting a little bit of background information about some of these different verticals within the broader fintech ecosystem, which I think will be useful. You can find all this in the major bookstores or in online book depository as well. That's the part that you need to at least be familiar what's out there. Now, for people who are trying to switch from, let's say, a traditional outfit into a fintech, then you have to think about whether you have what kind of mindset you have, and whether are you able to work in a very unstructured fashion. Because actually, regardless if it's fintech or otherwise, if it's a startup, then things tends to be a little bit for its goodness of it, it's more a little bit random, a little bit unstructured, a little bit messy, and then you try and discover things, whereas for a larger organization, everything is very structured. If you expect an organization or a startup organization to actually have all these structured trainings that you can be sent to, then I think that would not be quite possible. So it really depends on yourself, what kind of attitude you bring to the table. If you have a can-do attitude, want to explore and want to discover, then I think that will be useful rather than the hard skill. Soft skills is also very important.
Well said. Steph, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I mean, I echo everything that Andrea and Chai Kit were saying. I think it's the mindset is number one for us, right? So as part of the innovation group, it's what we set out to do to begin with. So that entrepreneurial mindset, that hunger, the understanding that most human beings are just, you know, lazy and greedy. So how do you get to those guys? How do you make it happen, and how do you make an impact for them is extremely important. So I think that, yes, the mindset is extremely important. There needs to be that appetite, that hunger, and that self-learning, self-starter attitude. And even in the bank, you need that now. You know, it's no longer like I can sit at my desk at 9 to 5, and then that's it, I clock out, you know. You know, there were some questions around hard skills, and so I can get into those a little bit. Again, if you look at DBS as a fintech in itself, there are some hard skills that you would need, but very much similar to a fintech, except maybe we'll have, you know, more because of the scale that we're operating and the different markets as well. So you know, so you have the developers, you know, and the typical languages that we're looking at are Python, C++, Java, C, Node.js, and so on. Then there is a need for some learning and understanding of algorithms and cryptography and data. So if you guys are interested in that, then that's extremely important as well. It's to understand how to design and optimize for fast data access architectures, you know, examples like MongoDB, Apache. I guess I'm looking at you students, you know, in case you've been learning that. So just so you know, it's not going to waste. It will come in useful. Of course, you have data engineers, UI, UX developers, all the other jobs that Branson was listing in his slide. And more importantly, because I saw a question around someone asking, hey, you know, I'm about to graduate in, I think in business, in business management. So are there BD jobs, business development jobs out there? So essentially what I do with the team is a bit of a hybrid. So we're a bit of a BD guys. We're strategists, we're BDs. What we do is that we like to discover different fintechs and startups, and then in a way convince the businesses or the different stakeholders that, hey, you know, you should co-create something with them, or ecosystem council, you guys should consider partnering with these guys. So it's basically having your ears on the ground and then seeing what works best for the bank. And of course, for our customers and clients, most importantly. So yes, there are jobs out there. There's a whole swath of jobs out there because again, fintech is a very broad term. So, but yes, there will be something for you. It may not be called fintech in the title, but it is related to finance and technology. Yeah.
Great. And for the last question, so obviously it's weighing heavily on everyone's mind. In fact, one or two questions, you know, touched on this as well. Obviously, you know, it has completely changed the way we work and interact with each other. So what is your advice to a fresh graduate or mid-career professional looking to score, let's say, an internship with DBS or work for a fintech company? I guess it's somewhat related to the previous question. Anyone want to start off first?
So your question is, what would it take for a student to score an internship?
Yes.
Okay, so we have different types of, okay, I'm going to get into specifics, by the way. So we have the general internship, which is basically you're sitting in a particular department and you're doing what we call the BAU, which is business as usual. But my team and I also run a structured program called the WOW Accelerator. And so this year we ran a purely virtual accelerator where we took in 20 tech interns. So meaning those are computer science majors in different universities. And we mixed them up and formed squads. So for each squad, there were 4 interns, and each of the squads was resolving one problem statement at a time. So they each had their problem statements. And so at the end of it, we ended up having 7 different projects, but 5 with tech interns. And so most of the projects are now going to production thanks to that close collaboration. So I think the key is to look at, do you want to be inside the business on a day-to-day basis, you know, like to have a day-to-day experience? Or do you want to have this like acceleration of a program such as the ones that we run? And so for those different paths, there are some prerequisites, you know, for application, and usually it's done through DBS Careers, or now we're also recruiting through SG United, but SG United is more for fresh grads and mid-career professionals. Yeah.
Thanks, Steph.
I think if I add for us at Cynopsis, I mean, we do have constant interactions, as well as talking to the new universities, and as well as polytechnics to open up internship opportunities. So we call it the ARC program, Accelerated RegTech Challenge program, and it has got a business track as well as the tech track. So we do, like recently, I think since May, actually it's interesting because during the COVID period, we accepted these students from between NUS and NTU and SMU for internships, before COVID occurred. And I think there are about 8 of them altogether between business as well as tech side. So it's interesting because we ran this program during the 3 months from May to August, whilst everybody is actually working from home. So it's an interesting experience, but I think it's actually how we try to make it work on both sides. That is the startups perspective, as well as the willingness of the undergraduates or the students to try to make a difference, in whether or not you're working from home or whether working from office. As far as we're concerned, the tracks are there, and we do have situations, a couple of them, whereby undergraduates went on the internship with us, and then we convert that to a permanent role as well. So it happens.
Great.
Okay. Maybe add on our side as well. We are encouraging internships as a way to get to know the industry, to get to know us, especially in a startup. Is extremely important to understand, a mutual fit, right? How our startup works is extremely different from how maybe a big organization works. So we really encourage that. And if anybody in the audience is interested to explore, I mean, feel free to reach out to our HR team, or via our own pages. Or you can write in by email. You can write on LinkedIn and so on and so forth. And we think it's a really good entry point. Yeah, it's good to explore and see if there's something for you.
Great. So now we'll go into the Q&A. I see quite a number of questions from a few persons talking about them being an RM in a bank right now, and how do they go about switching from a traditional bank to a fintech, because apparently some of them actually felt that they were being told that they don't have any experience in selling quote unquote fintech products. Any thoughts around that, panelists?
My quick 2 cents is if you are a salesperson, it doesn't really matter whether it's still the same financial product at the end of the day, right? It's whether you're selling at the back with say, for example, DBS as the background, being the bank that you're selling products from, or you're selling from an unknown newbie, new kids on the block type of product, like a fintech, for example, a startup. So it doesn't mean that if you are successful as a relationship manager in banks, for example, you will be able to sell a fintech product, say for example a software or application for the client to use. So it depends, and as well as, I think I would say, to be quite frank, sometimes it's also an expectation gap, because if you're an RM working for a bank, maybe I'm not sure if, let's say for example, if you are being paid $7,000-8,000, for example. It's just hypothetical. And then, if it's a small startup that may not be able to afford that sort of salary, on a regular basis, and maybe they're not even making money even, so the expectation gap will be there, so it's whether if you say, for example, if you really like this structure, really like this organization, then you go for it, and there will be some possibility that the salary expectation may not be able to meet your what you want. Then it's, do you want to take the risk? It's your call, but I'm just saying that these are real consideration that people need to balance up in terms of their career choice, or especially for career switches.
Yeah, if I may add, I guess in my previous life I was a salesman, right? So, but the advice I would have is find another company because I agree with one of the in fact one person who said that the products can be different, but at the end of the day it's about how you bring across your soft skills. Yes. Right, and understanding what the customer wants. Yeah. Going after the problems rather than pushing boxes, what we say in sales. That's the most important.
And in fact, to be quite frank, without the big brand of the traditional organization that you have worked with behind you, because sometimes bank sells for itself because of the brand. Yeah, people believe that product, and people believe the insurance company, and so on and so forth. But if you're a new kid on the block, no brand, no credibility, then I think it's also, from a sales perspective, it's also a test of that person's ability to sell and convince. And of course, no one wants to missell anything. To be able to really bring the value add that this product has for the client, so that they can put the check on the table for you, and that's the long and short of it. Why should they believe you?
Yeah. And can I add on to that? So I feel that also part of it is really believing in, and I can't believe I'm saying this because you guys are talking about moving from a bank to a fintech. So it's like us losing our people. But I just feel like it's really about believing in the mission of the fintech, so really understanding why you're even applying there in the first place. So you need to really know what the purpose is and live it, right? And then finally, I went on an interview like a while ago at a tech company, and the first thing that they asked me was, so you see this pen? Can you just sell it to me? It's like the Wolf of Wall Street line, but really it is about how do you clearly articulate what this company stands for. So if you're able to sell the fintech that you're interviewing with, then I think I speak on behalf of Chai Kit and Andrea and Branson, but I think you're halfway there already.
How about let's take another question. There's one question here, obviously from a fresh grad, asking how does he or she go about trying to get a career in fintech. I think this is I think we covered a little bit of this earlier.
I think if I can quickly summarize that, it's like, first of all, you need to really know what you're good at and what you want to do, what you're passionate about. I don't think people should be thinking of, let's just go into fintech because I think it's hip, or because I think there is a hype, because I think there is a future. But if you don't have the, some of those things that we talked about, and you don't think you want to stand the, say for example, the constant pressure or the day-to-day pressure that the startup environment brings to you, then you will probably end up being unhappy. Now, if you're unhappy about doing a role or job, then you will hate going to work every morning, and then your performance will suffer, and then you will think you'll be disillusioned. So to be quite frank, startup environment is not for everybody. But if you are fresh, if you are willing to take risk, and you are willing to do the hard miles, then I think certainly welcome the right attitude and mentality.
And if I may add to that, I think speaking of experience, I think we had an intern previously who worked for us, and the long story short is that this person finally didn't make it because it's also about the attitude, right? At the end of the day, and this person came in with a certain mindset, but at the end of the day, he or she decided that it's he or she is doing some things that are beyond the job scope. So I think that's the mindset, right? So because at the end of the day, a startup is very unstructured, like what Chai-Kit said. So you must be prepared to actually go beyond your comfort zone, to actually do things that is not on your within the job scope, so to speak, right? So that's the other important bit. Yeah. Any other things to add, Andrea?
I completely agree with you, and somehow, I mean, in large organizations, I won't name which one in this panel, but in some large organizations, sadly, there's a lot of my job stops here. Okay, it's like from here to here, and then I don't go any further, and it's sad. It's like, why limit yourself and your potential when you could do more? Oh, because you think someone's getting paid to do that, so you don't feel like you want to get like ripped off of your privileges. It's not the way it should be. So we find that a lot of teams are becoming leaner and leaner, and the ones that are most rewarded are the ones that actually expand their horizons a little bit. And even if you don't succeed, because there's always this fear of like, oh, but if I try this, it's out of my comfort zone, I'm going to totally fail, and it's going to affect my performance and all that stuff, So continuously, it's a work in progress, but we're always trying to push this culture of, hey, it's okay to fail. At least you learn something, and you made the bank learn something as well through that. So I totally agree with you on that one.
Yeah, and if I may add, I think probably all the listeners are sort of hearing this word a lot, right? I can figure, right? Mindset, right? And it might not be the most obvious one, because no one asked which mindset do I need to have, right? Everyone is asking which skills, which is counterintuitive, but fundamentally everyone here is saying that it's more about the mindset than the skills, and everybody is asking which skills. And the point is that you might be surprised by how many people come in and they do not succeed based on the mindset and not on the skills. And this is certainly my experience all the way. So that's I think it's a really fair point that is sort of coming up.
Yeah, we have a few questions specifically for Chai-Kit, I guess. KYC, CDD processes, and how do they get into the compliance bit?
I think the two parts. To be quite clear, if you have got a passion to read rules and regulations, and with a bit of an inquisitive mind, you want to apply for a job in bank's compliance department, there's tons of jobs, and compliance roles, as Branson have said, compliance function is a very important function. So as far as I know, a lot of banks and larger institutions globally are continuously hiring and paying good money to good compliance officer. It's an essential function. It's not, that job is not going to go away. But what is changing is the nature of the roles within compliance function, in which some of the more mundane, routine, like transaction monitoring, some of the screening, and some of these very, very routine type of work, monotonous, have already been replaced by software, by automation, by some level of AI and NLP and whatnot. So if you are anchoring for a role in compliance, then the advisory bit of compliance, that means reading and interpretation of the rules, and the practical assessments of some of these rule changes and all that, yes, that is still very relevant. But if you're looking at going into a compliance function, to tick the boxes and all this, I'm sorry, that job is already been two ways of it being replaced. One is a lot of banks and organizations have shipped this to a low-cost location. And second is they've also been replaced by automation.
Okay, I think we have we have overrun the session, to be honest. But I still see some questions coming in. But if you want, you can actually get in touch with us at Singapore FinTech Association. So there you have it. Lots of great insights from our panelists today. Thank you, Steph from DBS, Chai-Kit from Cynopsis, and Andrea from Aspire. So thank you so much, guys. If you would like to follow up on some of these questions, please do email us and reach out to us. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks so much, everyone. Thanks for dialing in.
Okay, so thank you so much to all our speakers and panelists. Now, this is the end of the main presentation. However, we would like to invite our Polytechnic students in the audience to do stay on, as we have Dr. Sarah Zaman from Ngee Ann Polytechnic next, and she will be sharing on the Startup Talent Factory, which is designed to give fresh Polytechnic graduates a career head start in entrepreneurship. So may I just invite Dr. Sarah, are you there? Please do turn on your video if you'd like, and your mic.
Thank you very much for the introduction. Is my voice coming through strong and loud?
Yes, it is.
Right, so again, appreciate everyone for staying back. I'm just going to take 5 minutes to talk a little bit about the Startup Talent Factory. And this is for Polytechnic graduates, so specifically for Polytechnic graduates. So can I have the next slide, please? So this program matches Polytechnic graduates to startups. So if you're keen to work in a startup, then you may want to consider this program. So if you look under Secure Your Future, so that's the padlock sign, so under Secure Your Future, you can see that this involves employment in a startup and you earn a competitive starting salary. Since this is a company-sponsored program, the company will actually pay for your course fees and you stay in employment in the company for 9 to 12 months and then attend some coursework back at Ngee Ann Polytechnic. The next slide, please. So this is an example of the modules that you'll be taking under the Startup Talent Factory program. So if you can look under the module section, you'll be learning modules such as Startup Finance and Operation, Startup Product Development. You'll be able to do a mini project and then select an elective. Our most common elective is the Digital Marketing elective. So altogether, you'll have to spend about 12 days going through these modules. So once you complete these 4 modules, that means the finance and operations, product development, digital marketing, and the project. Once you complete these 4 modules and have completed work in the startup for 9 to 12 months, you will be given a certificate in entrepreneurship from Ngee Ann Polytechnic. So in terms of the entry requirements, this program is open to all Polytechnic graduates from the 5 local polytechnics, and you can be from any diploma background. So next slide, please. So this is a summary of the number of runs we've had. We've already have 5 runs, and we've placed about 162 polygrads in 118 startups. So we do try to do the matching of polygrads to the startups. I'm just going to give you 2 examples. So for example, Mabel, she graduated with a diploma in tourism and resort management, and she joined a startup called Payboy as a business development executive. And then another candidate, Arena, she had a diploma in financial informatics, and she joined IDA as a software engineer. So these are some examples of candidates that we placed in some startups. The next slide, please. So if you would like to know more about the Startup Talent Factory, then please do visit our website, startuptalentfactory.mp.edu.sg, or you can email us at askstf@np.edu.sg, and we'll get back to you soon. Our next intake actually starts in 1st November. So we've opened up applications for our November intake of the Startup Talent Factory program. So if you're keen, then please do check out our jobs that we've posted on the Startup Talent Factory portal. Thank you so much for your time. Appreciate this, and have a great day. Bye.
All right, thank you, Dr. Sarah, as well. Now, dear audience, thank you for joining us today, and we do hope that this presentation has been useful to you, and we hope to see you once again at our future events. Thank you all.